Welcome to Valley Politics. I'm your host, Terry Christensen. Today, our guests are Bob Nunez and Bill James. Respectively, they are the chairman of the Santa Clara County Republican and Democratic Party Central Committees. We'll talk about the state of their parties locally and statewide, and we'll discuss whether the Republican Party in California is doomed and whether total Democratic dominance in our state is actually a good thing. We also talk with the Registrar of Voters about why counting the ballots takes so long. And that's what's coming up on Valley Politics. Before we talk with our party chairman, we'd like to show you some video we shot before the November election. First, we talked with a random group of voters, and then we interviewed Shannon Bushey, the Santa Clara County Registrar of Voters. We asked her about voter turnout and also why it takes this county so long to count the ballots. Let's take a look.
We have an election coming up November 6th. Do you plan to vote?
Yes, I do.
You bet.
Absolutely, I do.
Yes, I do.
Absolutely, I plan to vote.
Yes, I do plan to vote.
I do.
I do plan to vote.
Yes.
Will you vote by mail or at your neighborhood polling place?
I'll vote by mail.
I'm actually going to vote early next Monday.
No, I usually go to St. John's Church and vote there.
By mail, actually, I drop it off here.
By mail.
Actually by mail, and I actually did it recently with my grandma.
I'm going to vote by mail.
By mail.
At my neighborhood polling area.
Are you interested in any particular candidates or issues?
Personally, I really think it's important to try and flip the control of the Congress.
I'm interested in voting out Republicans.
There's definitely a lot of issues, but I am looking forward to being an informed voter and doing a lot of research this weekend to make sure that I am informed about all of the measures. Right now, no measures particularly stand out to me.
Not particularly. I'm just kind of doing my research for right now.
Not in particular. There's a lot of smaller community issues that I try to pay attention to. There's some issues with the water board right now.
Not yet, no.
Homelessness and how we're going to address that issue.
Prop 1 really matters to me. Affordable housing for veterans and families, working families.
Well, basically just human rights.
So here we are in Silicon Valley, but the last election, Santa Clara County election results were the last to be reported in the state. And a lot of people wonder why, if we're in Silicon Valley, we're so slow.
Well, there's a couple factors that play into that. Yes, I hear that we're in Silicon Valley and we should be able to count faster, but the fact is that we have to purchase a certified voting system. The Secretary of State's office is the responsible party for certifying voting systems, so we're only allowed to choose from certified vendors. And at this moment today, we have 2 vendors that have a newer system that is out there. So the other reason that we're slow on election night, and will continue to be for this November election, is because we have the same voting system that we had in June. And the main issue with that is we're a central count voting system, meaning that all of the ballots from the 849 polling places will need to come back to our office to then be processed, open the sealed ballot bags, and sent back to the 18 machines that we have doing the vote counting. So we will continue with the same timing on our results until we get a new voting system. We're currently in an RFP process to obtain a new voting system with the ultimate goal of implementing that in the March 2020 primary election.
So if it weren't central, the count could happen automatically at the polling place and then just the numbers come to you?
To that effect, we would do polling place, yes, we would do precinct counting, as they call it, and then basically like that cartridge would come back to our office and we would just upload the results and have them instantly instead of hundreds of volunteers needing to go through paper ballots and then running them through the counting machine. So they would be counted in the precinct, those totals then would be driven back to our office, and then we can upload them and be done in a much shorter time.
So you're in the process of finding a vendor, and hopefully this takes effect in 2020.
Correct.
And we'll get results faster than at least some other counties around the state in 2020, right?
Yes, the election night reports results will be shorter, but remember though, after that we have 30 days to complete the canvass.
Yeah.
And with such a high vote by mail, percentage of voters in our county, the vote by mail process is a very manual, labor-intensive process where we have to signature check every single signature on the outside of a vote by mail envelope, and then physically extract the ballots and flatten them and take them to counting. So, but definitely our election night results will be much faster.
Welcome everyone, and welcome Bill James, Chair of the Santa Clara County Democratic Party, and Bob Nunez, Chair of the Santa Clara County Republican Party. Happy to have you with us today. A little bit of a retrospective look at what happened on November 6th and actually what's kind of still happening, because they're still counting votes as we record this. We just showed a video of our interview with Shannon Bushey, the Santa Clara County Registrar of Voters, and she explained to us why it takes so long. Does this worry you at all, Bob? And also, some Republicans elsewhere have raised the issue of voter fraud. Do you worry about that at all locally?
So I'm not worried at all about voter fraud. I think that they do an exceptional job of counting the votes. It does take a long time, but I think once we get a system in place, an automated system, that'll be fine. But I don't sit up nights worrying about fraud with regard to the system. I think the vote is what the vote is, and I tell that to anybody that asks me.
Bill, what about you? What about the slow count?
Well, I agree with Bob. I'm not concerned at all about fraud, and I think the registrars in her office, they're doing what's needed to be done to make sure that the votes are all counted and done so in an accurate and fair way. And in some ways it speaks to the success that we've had in getting folks to sign up to vote by mail, which I think has increased participation. And once people vote by mail in such big numbers, I think it's 80% in Santa Clara County. It just takes them that much time to verify the signature and feed the ballots into the machines, and it requires some patience, which I think is hard for those of us in Silicon Valley because we're used to kind of internet speed.
Yeah, isn't it on my phone now?
Yes, exactly.
She did say that the new system will speed it up on election night, but it's still going to take a long time, days or weeks after, because of the high percentage of voters by mail, and you have to verify every signature on every ballot. So it'll speed it up a little bit. We'll know a little bit more. We'll know a little bit earlier on election night. She also predicted a voter turnout of 60 to 70%, which is pretty much spot on. Looks like it's going to be a little higher than that in Santa Clara County, 71 or 72%. And that's big. In 2014, the last midterm, Santa Clara County was 50%. 2016, the last presidential, it was 80%. So this is closer to presidential turnout than typical midterm. What was going on? What do you think produced this enthusiasm, Bill?
Well, I think on the Democratic side, it was two things. One, it was the national picture. I think people felt great concern. The Democrats are out of power in Washington. They really wanted to do what they could about it, and the vote is the one thing that they have the power to do in terms of participation. Also, I think the local elections are important to people, and with vote by mail, it's a little bit easier for people to participate, and I think that probably helped with turnout as well.
And I think I agree with that, but at the same time, I think that it really, in Santa Clara County, it really is about the local offices. You know, if you go, and I've traveled to Orange County, LA, Riverside, there it really is about the national picture. Here, it really is about who's running for school board, city council. Here, it's about housing, and persons want to be there and vote for those. And so for the Republican Party, we wanted to make sure that we got out to those persons that are still part of our party and tell them who's running, who's Republican, and why they should go out and vote for those persons.
Of course, Democratic Party was doing get out the vote, as always.
Yes.
Right? Well, congratulations, because you got out a lot of voters.
Yes, that's great.
Maybe President Trump helped a little bit with some of that, and local candidates. There were a lot of candidates out going door to door, and that really does make a difference. I want to look at voter registration for a minute. Looking at the county, Santa Clara County, we see Republicans have slipped to, Bob, 17% of registered voters, 24% statewide. Democrats, Bill, holding pretty steady, 46% in Santa Clara County, 44% statewide. The only actual growth in numbers is with people who decline to state a political party, no party preference. And they're at 34% in Santa Clara County, 28% statewide. And those numbers are an historic high. So, Bill, Democratic registration is holding steady, but it's not growing so much as voters pick party, no party preference. Does that worry you as the party chair?
It does worry me. It worries me for our local efforts, and it has been identified as a strategic requirement for the party, statewide, to address that as a trend. Obviously, if that were to continue, we'd have more people declaring no party preference than declaring party preference. And I think that the party will have to convince people that there's a benefit to identifying with a party. And among other things, it's hard to reach out to your voters if you're not sure who they are. On the Democratic side, candidates and campaigns will often guess, well, we should talk to Democrats and no party preference because we think they might lean our way, but it's really not possible to tell. And if everybody were kind of behind that label, it might be harder to organize politically.
So Bob, 17% in Santa Clara County, is the Republican Party doomed? What can you do?
Well, I wouldn't say doomed. I think that California as a whole, and this county in particular, but as a whole, we're not, this isn't the middle of the country. This isn't that part that is really so far to the right. I think that we need to be able to stand on our own. You know, there isn't one particular Republican that you can say, we're not the typical Trump Republicans here in California, and when you try to make us that, persons say, well, then I'd rather be over here on the side that says I don't have to state my party affiliation. And I think in California what we need to be able to say is you can be a Republican and not follow, you know, 2 or 3 strands and that's it. That doesn't mean that's the only thing I can be. And so we need to be able to say to members of the Republican Party in California that we have 1 or 2 things, but our platforms really can cover many others. And that's what we try to strive for in Santa Clara County, that we can have many issues that we agree on, others that maybe we don't, but that's okay that we don't agree with the national party over and over and over again, and still be Republicans. Too often we fight amongst ourselves about what a true Republican is, and we have to stop that.
Well, I think you have a challenge. You're not only losing voters as registrants, but 2 San Jose City Council members recently left the party to become independents. And the last Republican elected to the state legislature, Jim Caneen from this area, also has declined to be Republican any longer. How do you stop that bleeding?
Well, and I think it's addressing it head on. I think that persons that decide they want to decline to state doesn't necessarily mean they aren't Republicans anymore. Those persons that leave the party, I'd like to go and talk to them and find out, why did you leave the party? Now, the 2 persons you talked about that left the city council.
The council members, yes.
They actually left the party, and so I say, okay, that's your choice. But there's others that have just declined to state. So when we do our outreach, we really outreach to all of those persons and say, you may just decide to not define and have the R behind your name, but you still have things that are in common with us. And so we reach out to them all the time. And we see them as really persons that will vote for Republicans. We just need to make sure that we inform them what we still stand for.
Well, you've got a big challenge. California has become a blue state. Blue is the designated color for Democrats. And I don't know if we could get much bluer. There are only 7 Republicans in the 53-member California congressional delegation, an historic low. Every single statewide elected official is a Democrat, and no Republican has been elected to statewide office since 2006. Democrats have big majorities, over 2/3 in both houses of the state legislature, a majority on the state Supreme Court, a majority of judges statewide. We really are becoming a one-party state. But Bill, this is supposed to be a system of checks and balances.
Right.
Where's the check and balance with this overwhelming Democratic majority across the board?
Well, I think that will be very interesting to see in the coming Newsom administration. I think in the Jerry Brown administration, the most recent ones, he's been the check. I think that he's held back, along with maybe the Democratic leadership in the legislature, he's held back the kind of most progressive and liberal impulses of the Democratic Party, and I mean that in the nicest way because I favor them myself. And I think it will be interesting to see how Governor Newsom and the legislature work together. I think as the Democrats have become dominant, the tent that we represent is broader and broader, and so sort of within the coalition, there are naturally, well, I'll say that some of the success among congressional candidates in the Central Valley and among Assembly and Senate candidates in the Central Valley is due to the fact that they match those locations. And I think they tend to be more conservative than coastal areas, even though they have a Democratic Party identification. And that will probably create some strain among Democratic activists when we realize that we don't get every single vote in our supermajority in the legislature for every issue that we care about.
Well, with such overwhelming majorities, if things go wrong in California, there will be nobody to blame but Democrats.
Yes, we have to be prepared for that and expect that, and that's fair. It's fair for voters to expect us to perform.
And Bob, I'm wondering where your bench is. There are no statewide office holders for Republicans. There's not a single Republican in the Bay Area congressional or state legislative delegation. And I looked at your website, and I saw you endorsed 15 candidates for local office. 10 of them won, congratulations. But the Democrats endorsed 42 who won, 22 who lost, but 64 endorsements versus 15 endorsements. Where's the bench? Where are the next generations of political leaders for your party?
They're not there. Right now, they're not there. And I'm a firm believer that the system that's in place right now is not going to generate those leaders. So we need to establish a new way of identifying them and nurturing them to the point where they are ready. And I think that's possible. So I think it's looking at it in a new way. And I think in doing that, there's a group called Grow Elect that is doing that for Latino voters. We're also looking at doing that for
Latino voters?
I'm sorry, Latino
Republican perspective. You found some?
Yes.
Besides yourself?
Yes,
cool.
we did. And then we're also looking at persons that of Vietnamese candidates that want to, that are Republicans that want to. And then looking at really up and down the state, persons that want to run as Republicans that we can help and do it within the system, but not constrained by that system. And right now, I believe that's what's hindering most persons, is that they talk about, and I heard it over here, this tent.
Yeah.
I think the Republican Party always we're famous for saying we have this large tent. And actually, what we want is persons to get out, the Republicans to get out of that tent and come out here where we're at. Because that tent seems to confine us as Republicans. And we want them out here where we can say, this is what we're doing now. And if you want to, the new Republican Party is outside that tent, not inside the tent.
Well, good luck.
Thank you.
It's a challenge.
Yes, it is.
You know very well.
Yep.
So another challenge for Republicans, possibly, maybe for Democrats too, is women voters. Very big this year, very high turnout amongst women voters, but also women getting elected. 3 women statewide office holders elected in California. First time we had 3. 8, and that's not counting Senator Feinstein. 8 new women legislators in the state legislature. And I did a little research at the Registrar's website. In Santa Clara County, 54% of the winners in elections for city council and school trustee were women. 54%. 68 in total. Almost all of them were Democrats. How do you do it? How do you keep women happy and engaged and democratic?
Well, I think that women have been a big factor in this last election cycle. Nationally, I think that the Democrats benefited greatly from really extraordinary women candidates coming forward as part of their response to the election of Donald Trump. And that created a lot of opportunities for us in races for Congress.
It was interesting, a lot of those women were veterans.
Yes, it's true. A lot of military veterans, really on both sides of the both parties as well. And that was a significant factor, I think. But great candidates came forward. Women really energized to vote, to participate in the process, and I think that that did come down to the local level. Women who maybe wouldn't have otherwise have run felt, I'm going to get this is the year I'm going to do it. If ever I'm going to get involved in politics, this is the time I'm going to do it. But I think that they're filling a void to some extent. Among the Democrats, at least, there has been a perception that there haven't been enough women office holders, and we're slowly moving in a good direction. I remember after getting out of the Navy myself, I became involved in local politics in the year that Senator Feinstein and Senator Boxer and Anna Eshoo were all first elected, the Year of the Woman, right? And so here we are in another Year of the Woman, and I think it has been a transformational election. But I think Republicans nationally will struggle with their own success nationally as they appoint conservative judges. I think will allow some laws that interfere with reproductive choice, and I believe women they'll suffer. They'll pay a price for that among women. I think we saw nationally Republicans losing votes among suburban women, and that seems to have been a significant factor. But naturally there should be as many women as there are men in office, and if there weren't, one would want to look at it and decide and understand why.
Well, 54% of the winners in Santa Clara County.
Yes, moving in the right direction.
For council and school trustee. Bob, what's the Republican Party doing to bring in women voters and support women candidates?
Not enough, and to some extent, in some areas, nothing. I think that too often what the Republican Party really says is, here we are, you come to us, and it's that tent mentality again, and we really have to get away from that. So starting next year, we are going to do that, really go out and start building that bench by going out and identifying those persons that help persons get elected, and those persons that are Republican or aren't affiliated with any party, and convincing them that we are the right place, the right party, and then hopefully helping them establish themselves as candidates within their city, their neighborhood. Outreach is important, I think, and that's the one thing our party does not do. We stand and wait for persons to come to us.
Yeah. You're talking about candidate recruitment?
Yes.
Does the Democratic Party actively recruit candidates?
So that's an interesting question. I'm often asked that question, and I would say that our doors are open to them. The candidates that so far that I've seen become successful have been very self-motivated. But I think it is important to offer something. It's important to offer encouragement and opportunity. And so, for example, I always pay attention to younger candidates and women and candidates who are people of color, because I feel that if they've come forward, they've taken a step in the direction of the party, and we need to be careful to be welcoming of them. We do a lot of outreach through clubs, which I think is a very effective approach, because the club can be sort of a comfortable home base for a candidate who might not otherwise come forward, and a way of being introduced to the broader group of the party.
People can find out about the Democratic Party clubs on your website.
Exactly. Yes. Thank you for that plug.
Republican website too. Yeah.
You can.
Okay, just a little plug there.
Yes.
Thank you.
So guys, the top two primary, how popular is that with you guys? Once again in 2016, the top two primary system gave us 2 Democrats running for the U.S. Senate, and 2 Democrats, and in a couple of cases 2 Republicans running for some legislative
2 Democrats running for lieutenant governor.
Oh, that's right, lieutenant governor too. Bill, was it a good thing for the Democratic Party to have Democrats running against Democrats for those high offices?
Well, 2 things. I dislike very much the top 2 primary. I really think that all parties ought to be able to, through their own partisan primary process, choose the one candidate that they would like to put forward. I think it would help voters to see a distinction between candidates and to have a more real choice when it comes to Election Day in November. That said, we were mostly relieved. I think that some of our leaders, both from the DCCC, the Congressional Campaign Committee, and also the state party, worked mostly together and occasionally in different ways that worked out to avoid what Democrats feared, which is that we'd end up with 2 Republican candidates in some of the seats that we eventually won in Southern California, because there were a number of Democrat candidates running. In one instance, T.J. Cox, who appears to be on his way to a very narrow victory in his congressional race, in fact, I think that's now been called in his favor, moved.
He called it. I'm not sure anybody else
Yeah, I
did.
think that he did. I think he did. Yeah, some of the press did. But he moved, as you know, from the running in the 10th congressional district to run in the 21st, which is always a tricky thing. But that was among the things that that leaders were doing behind the scenes and leaders of the congressional delegation to try to avoid that potential for an outcome. I don't like it. I think parties should be able to choose their candidates. I think it's worked out better for Democrats than others, honestly, in the end, although the Democrats maybe didn't expect that. But I think each party should be able to choose its own candidate.
So, Bob, 11.7 million people voted for governor, but only 10.4 million people voted for U.S. Senate, where we had the 2 Democrats in the top 2 primary. So 1.3 million people didn't vote for U.S. Senate. Normally that's the high-profile position. I'll bet you they were Republicans. So are your folks feeling disenfranchised? What's your feeling about the top 2 primary?
So if you went to one of our conventions,
yes,
you would find that that is probably the most talked about item.
Really?
Yes. It is just about evenly split. Persons that say it gives an opportunity for the top 2 persons to fight it out for that seat. But on the other side, you will find a person saying it didn't turn out the way we thought it would turn out, that we are left out of the big races. And so that issue really was one that came out of this county.
Yep.
And I think that we should at least go back and review it and talk about it and see if there's a way to tweak it so that in fact Republicans do have an opportunity to talk about getting a Republican into some of those races, because it does seem that that number didn't shock me. What I've seen is a number of times when there are 2 Dems in a race that Republicans just don't vote at all in that race. And it is something that I think we need to be aware of.
Well, guys, we're out of time.
Oh, we could do this all day.
I know, we could go on and on.
We have.
Well, I know I have more questions, but thank you, Bill James, Santa Clara County Democratic Party.
My pleasure.
Bob Nunez, Santa Clara County Republican Party. Thanks for what you do for the electorate, and thanks for being here today.
My pleasure. Yeah, thank you.
That's our show for today. We hope you'll join us next month when we'll be back with a 1-hour special on the time when the Valley awakened to the costs of rampant, uncontrolled growth and how the policies that produced that urban sprawl were changed, and also the legacy of those years. Our special guests will include leaders who were part of that change. Meanwhile, you can catch up on previous shows on our website at creatvsj.org or on YouTube by searching for CreaTV San Jose. And you can let us know what you think about our show and suggest future topics or guests by email at valleypolitics@creatv.org, on Twitter at valley_politics, and by following us on Facebook. And now that's all, folks. Thanks for watching Valley Politics today. See you next time.